Joining us now is Florida Congresswoman Laurel and trial attorney Glenn Summers, who represented Mr. Fortenberry at trial. Thank you both for being here. I have no objectivity when it comes to Jeff Fortenberry. I know far too much about what the FBI and DOJ did. So let's start with Rachel Rollins. Congresswoman, she engaged in some pretty egregious behavior for someone who's supposed to be enforcing the law. Can you let our viewers know what the investigations found?
Well, she did, Trey, and really her conduct is remarkable in its impropriety. So what she did was a series of things that are very significant ethical lapses, not the least of which is taking confidential inside information from the U.S. Attorney's Office and sharing it with the media in an effort to affect the outcome of a partisan political investigation. What's more, once this activity was actually investigated, she lied to investigators about what she had actually done. And when you understand the basic purpose of the U.S. Attorney's Office and the federal prosecutors, their entire foundational responsibility is to apply and enforce the law without any regard to a person's background or their political beliefs. So that we have a U.S. attorney here who not only clearly doesn't understand that, but actually engaged in activity of a partisan nature while she was in office is about the most profound breach of those basic ethical principles that one can imagine. So it's a very disappointing thing to see out of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I'm sure is a disappointment to the men and women across the country who are trying to do that difficult and important work in our communities.
So, Glenn, I guess that makes me wonder, I mean, Jeff Fortenberry was charged, he lost his job, he lost his life savings, and Rachel Rollins just resigns with kind of a quasi-negative article in Politico and goes on with life. So, I mean, look, you're an experienced trial attorney. Maybe the cases are different, but they sure look similar to me.
Trey, the cases could not be more different. But what is interesting is that the facts with Rachel Rollins are far, far more egregious than they were with Congressman Fortenberry. In the case of U.S. Attorney Rollins, when she lied, she was in a formal interview under oath. She was being interviewed by the Office of the Inspector General. She knew the law. Her office has prosecuted people for lying under similar circumstances. She knew the gravity of the moment, and she knew exactly what they were asking about. Now let's look at the Fortenberry case. They showed up unannounced at his house, interviewed him at 8 o'clock at night in his living room. They had lied about who they were. They had lied about why they were there. They did not tell him what they were why they were asking the questions they were asking. And then, and I believe if you look at the transcript, they deliberately tried to set him up when he tried to elicit the information that they supposedly were trying to get. They cut him off. They engaged in tactics like dropping the papers and then changing the topic of conversation. He was set up and taken down. And we have to keep in mind, with Congressman Fortenberry, there was no underlying crime. The informants that the U.S. Attorney's Office had been working with were very clear that Congressman Fortenberry knew nothing about the campaign finance violations that they were supposedly investigating, had no culpability. So he was set up and taken down solely because the prosecutor in that case determined and believed that, or supposedly believed that Mr. Fortenberry, Congressman Fortenberry, had not been telling the truth. With Rachel Rollins, the facts are far more egregious. There have been findings now by two agencies that she violated the Hatch Act. She violated all sorts of ethical rules. She knew what she had done, and she was deliberately trying to conceal it and lied under oath. So if anyone should be prosecuted here, it's clearly her and not former Congressman Fortenberry.
Congresswoman, many folks watching, including the three of us, quite frankly, have tremendous respect for cops and prosecutors. But something seems to be happening with the department and the FBI. It just seems to be trending in a bad direction. Your own House Judiciary, am I overreacting, or is something going on that is diminishing people's respect for the department and the Bureau?
No, Trey, you're not overreacting at all. That's exactly right. And I think that for those of us who do care and do respect, the men and women who are out there on the ground in our communities, it's all the more tragic. And I think what we're seeing time and again in the Judiciary Committee is that the problem is at the highest levels of the Department of Justice and the FBI. And what we have uncovered there, and the committee that's reviewing the weaponization of government, what they found is things like FBI resources being devoted to investigating people who are exercising their First Amendment rights to free expression and free association, that are going to parents, going to school board meetings, and just engaging in activities that you would expect, or people worshiping at their churches. And FBI resources are being directed to actually track and investigate and review those people. So it does appear that there is just a misdirection at the political level of these agencies that is then using resources where we really need them down in our communities, investigating sex traffickers and bank robbers and white-collar crime. So, no, it is a very serious concern, and we are engaged in very active and thorough oversight at this time in the Judiciary Committee to make sure that if there is a problem, if there are bad actors, if there are people who are directing those resources in a political way, that we get to the bottom of it.
Well, I'll tell you this, Merrick Garland is welcome to come on. He is welcome to come on and explain. If there's an explanation for why you prosecuted a Republican congressman for failing a memory test, and you declined to prosecute a sitting United States attorney who lied under oath, come on and explain it to us. In the meantime, thank you both for joining us. And